It's okay, we're gonna go, I mean, I only asked him a long time ago. I know.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee for Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. And I want to acknowledge that we are gathered in the heart of the Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta. This land is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, also the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and our most adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki First Nations. Further, we're located within the Métis Nation of Alberta, District 4. As we are all treaty people, we each have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor all life. Now looking to the agenda, Dr. Cottle.
We do have one addition to the agenda, another in-camera item around the wastewater treatment plant and utility rates. Water treatment plant, excuse me. Thank you. And that the Finance Committee take this meeting in camera to prevent disclosure of information that, if released, could reasonably be expected to interfere with contract negotiations of the town. So we just want to add that.
Okay, so that will be under E2. E2. We don't have an E1. We do have a spot in the slides that say in camera.
And we should have, we should have an E. We have an in camera on the agenda.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so there should be E1 and E2. And E1 is around personnel.
Okay.
And E2 is around treatment plan and utility rates.
Okay, and would you suggest that we go in camera when we get to the spot in the slides that says in camera?
That's right.
And we'll do it for both of those?
Yep,
okay.
At once.
Okay. All right. Then with that amendment, I move approval of the agenda for November 14th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting as amended. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And thank you, Councillor McCallum, for joining us virtually, even though you're not feeling well today. So thank you.
I don't want you to get my cooties.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So now we'll move to the minutes of November 9th. And wondering if anyone has noticed any errors or omissions. Seeing none, then I'll move that we approve the minutes of November 9th, 2023 Finance meeting as presented. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And let's dive right into it then with D1, staff reports.
Okay, this will largely be me speaking, so I want to invite all of council to just jump in with questions at any time. And Councillor McCallum, I'll forget to look up at the screen, so please just speak up anytime if you have a question. And then everybody else in the room on administration, please jump in if I miss anything or there's a detail that I forget to mention. So while I'll be the main talker, everyone is welcome to join me. And I think, yeah, Ms. Hyde, perfect, thank you. So just wanted to start by, yeah, we're just waiting for the signal. No rush. I got nothing else on my calendar. Okay, thanks. So we'll just start with a quick recap of the agenda for today. So we're going to do, just as a high-level reminder, this is the last scheduled Finance Committee meeting where administration will be presenting. So I wanted to do a quick summary of how we got here. There are questions from previous meetings that we wanted to answer. You did make a motion requesting that we propose reductions, so we'll walk you through those, and then it's turned over to the Finance Committee from then on out for deliberations. So the summary of meetings are how we got here. As you will recall, the first Finance Committee meeting was October 31st. At that time, we started with the auditor and then an economic update, which included an overview of trends in inflation, interest rates, growth rates, and forecasts for what's coming. And this is an important context for the budget amendments that are in front of you, because all of those factors have influenced the town of Camworth budget. So, yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Cottle, I just wanted to sort of set the stage as well. Well, I certainly invite questions as we get to each topic so that we can deal with it in a moment. I'm going to suggest that we don't make any motions until after we've heard the whole thing, because everything might influence what sort of decisions or motions you might want to make. And I would hate something to be made and then regret if you hear something afterwards.
Undone,
Right,
yeah.
right. So anyways, thanks for the.
Okay. Then we went through the 2024 status quo operating budget and the amendments that were presented to you due to inflation and its impacts on the cost of living adjustment, extraordinary circumstance, and uncontrollable third-party costs. So the approved tax increase last year when we did the two-year budget, net of growth, was 5.5%. And what administration presented with all of those status quo items was a 7.8% increase net of growth with those amendments. Then there were two options presented to you as part of the budget: the community evaluator position, making it full-time and permanent, which the Finance Committee did include in the budget, which would take the tax increase net of growth to 8%. And then accessible, the one-time request for funding for an accessible vehicle, which is part of the questions that we'll follow up on. Our second meeting was on November 2nd, and that was an overview of capital. We started with a mini tutorial, Capital 101, then walk through the 2023 status updates of those projects, budget amendments and cancellations, then an overview of the 24 to 28 capital budget and plan amendments to account for the $8.3 million for the Cougar Creek flood mitigation funding that was allocated earlier this year. And then Mr. Como walked you through the 2024 to 26 solid waste and utility rates. And then our last meeting was on November 9th, and Mr. Bean was here with the transit requisition. We walked through the paid parking budget amendments and the administration's proposal for Pelkey's perfect paid parking revenue allocation model. You just got to roll with all those P's once you have that many. So in terms of the questions from the previous meeting that we wanted to walk you through, the first one we had was just on the 2023 budget update and the variance. The question was around, in solid waste services, there was a question around an 81,000 or 72% variance, and why was that so large? It was due to the commercial food waste carts. 60,000 of that 81 were the purchase of the carts. The remainder was for the garbage bags and mutt mitts for the rest of the year. So there's that one. In terms of the accessible vehicle funding requests from Origin, one of the questions that the Finance Committee asked was if Spring Creek residents would get preferential treatment, and we've confirmed that no, that is not the case. If the town is a funder, all residents would have priority, or would have equal access. There would not be any resident who has priority over another. How would a contribution from the town of Canmore be recognized? The proposal includes things like vehicle wrap, website, social media channels, and as part of the booking confirmation, there would be notification that the town was a funder. What would be the agreement terms and consequences if it were not fulfilled? The idea is it would be a 3 to 5 year agreement with parameters for grant repayment if the terms are not upheld. And currently, just as a reminder, this is not included in the budget, so if it is something that council wants to include as one-time funding, we'll need to have a motion to do that. Or Finance Committee wants it to go to council for approval. Finance Committee will need to make a motion. So that's the accessible bus and that funding request. There was a question when we reviewed the provincial downloading about the changes to fine revenue over the years. So the question was, how much did the province historically take from fine revenues compared to the 50% they take now? Before April of 2021, it was 36%, and it's been 50% since then, so a 14% increase in the last 3 years. In terms of we were trying to do some quick back of the napkin math, and we just thought we'd provide you with, to make sure what everybody has is accurate, the tax impact on the median residential household. The median residential household is $969,000. So a 5.5% tax increase is $109 annually, or $9.11 a month. A 7.8% increase is $155 annually, or $12.92 a month. And the 8%, which would include the community evaluator, is $159 a year and $13.25 a month.
Councillor Graham?
Can somebody remind me what the average total tax bill for the average household is? I could do the reverse math, but not in my head. Sure.
$2,200 at 7.8%.
Municipal, okay, and the total tax bill is twice that, essentially. The education portion,
Is education about double? Yeah. Yes.
so 4,400 a year?
So that's including this increase,
Yeah.
of what it would be?
The 7.8.
The base would be just shy of $2,000 before any of these increases.
For the municipal portion,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Then there was questions about more information around fruit tree removal. So 94 private fruit trees were removed with our budget in 2023. There's $10,000 in the operating budget in 2024. Private properties have priority, and then any money that's left over we use to remove town trees. It would take 160 to 180,000 to remove high-yield fruit trees on public land. From our inventory that was done last year, there's about 400 crabapple, mountain ash, and chokecherry trees, and those are considered the high-yield trees. If council wanted to do more to remove trees on public land, we've provided two options. One is $30,000 a year over 5 years. Another is $20,000 a year over 8 years. And then we would need to monitor, there are over 30,000 low-yield trees and shrubs. That estimated cost to remove those is $1.65 million. It's unclear if it's worth the investment to remove those while we still have high-yield trees. So the idea would be to monitor. We did also want to make sure council was aware that the Biosphere Institute has been working with our sustainability team, and they are applying for a Calgary Foundation grant to assist with the removal of fruit trees on private property. The result of this grant is unknown at this time, but I do believe that they're looking for a significant amount that would help with low-yield trees and shrubs as well as high-yield.
Councilor
Can
Graham?
I ask a quick question on
You
this,
sure can.
please?
Yep, go ahead, Joanna.
Hi, thanks. So appreciate you adding that bit about the Calgary Foundation grant. Was this increase to fruit tree removal, if I remember correctly, did that not come as a sort of request from Y to Y?
So we haven't increased anything from the fruit tree removal. I'm not aware of a request from Y to Y. I believe it's come from the Biosphere Institute.
Well, and the Human Wildlife Coexistence Roundtable has also made recommendations around that. And so when the Biosphere put this together, it's actually been done in conjunction with a number of parties sitting around the table at the Human Wildlife Coexistence Roundtable. But the Biosphere is the one that's the applicant.
I would
Yeah,
add that.
but didn't we receive, I believe council received an email from Yellowstone to Yukon about fruit tree removal. Nobody else get that email,
No,
council?
Yeah, you're right. That was, I don't think it had, I could be wrong. I don't think it had specifically to do with this grant, but it was definitely encouraging Canmore to
Yes.
up its game.
Yeah, I guess I know it wasn't about the grant. I just was, I was thanking her for informing us about the grant, but the request for fruit tree or increased fruit tree removal, I just wanted to confirm that everybody else got that email that it came from Y to Y, which apparently it has. And I'm curious if at any point Y to Y has offered to partner financially on this fruit tree removal.
So administration is not aware of this email. I'm wondering if it only went to council. And I'm not aware of any partnership offering from Y to Y. I don't know, Whitney, if you have anything there.
I'm not aware of an offer to partner with the town. I am aware, though, that Y2Y is involved with the Biosphere, along with the town's sustainability team, in preparing this grant.
Great. All right, thank you.
And Councilor Graham.
So last year we removed roughly 100 trees for $10,000. But 400 crabapple trees or high yield trees are about $400 a unit.
So the difference, I believe, but correct me, Ms. Smithers, is that the 94 trees are grants to private homeowners to assist them with removing their trees. That doesn't pay for the full cost of tree removal, and it also doesn't pay for any replacement. So on town property, we would have to pay the full cost for all removal, not just the partial grant cost. And then there would need to be some replacement, otherwise we're not gonna have much vegetation on our town lands.
So this is replacement as well, because I'm reading just removal here.
Yeah, the replacement is important for reasons beyond the human-wildlife coexistence, right? An urban tree canopy provides numerous benefits, including addressing some of our climate concerns and greenhouse gas emission reduction and retaining water in the ground and things like that. So we wouldn't advocate for removing that many trees in town without replacing them.
Okay, so this is removal and replacement.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
That's a good clarification. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Any other questions? Don't see any.
Okay, then that's the last of the outstanding items of questions. The last item is the reductions request, which was that Finance Committee asked us to return with options to reduce the budget by 2.3%. So just a little bit on the approach of how we got to this list. We compiled all the service level increases that are part of the 2024 budget. So anything in 2024 that's new was reconsidered. We asked all managers to review their department budgets and submit us with a list of options. GMs then reviewed those submissions and did a secondary review of all departments just in case anything was missed or to look for themes across departments. CST reviewed all those submissions and created 6 categories of options, and what we've come up with is actually about 2.5%. And the 6 categories are, there is a small amount of things that we recommend you remove for a variety of reasons, which I'll walk you through. Things that you could remove, but the timing is uncontrolled and unknown, so there's a risk that we may go over budget because of the unpredictability of some of these items. A relook at the new services for 2024, things that could be one-time reductions for this year, meaning they'd still be back in the budget for next year, so it will lead to an additional tax increase, permanent reductions, and then some in-camera items because they deal with personnel. So if we start with the administration reductions, so when managers went back to their budgets, there were a few things that were identified that are likely, that either won't happen or are unlikely to happen in 2024. So we are recommending to Finance Committee that you remove these. There's $8,500 in communication, and this is really associated with Elevation Place. We used to, when we first opened Elevation Place, have brochures on the impact for tourists and visitors. We're finding that the facility is well-known and well-placed enough in the community that we don't need those. So they haven't been done, and that just we can do less marketing and advertising for Elevation Place. It tends to be plentiful, and we don't need to promote it in ways that we used to. The Human Resources Department is suggesting a reduction of $26,000. They had a project in 2024 around succession planning that, given workload, they're unlikely to get to. So the suggestion is that that be moved to 2025. And then pay scale, which is a subscription that we use around pay financing for pay.
It's a subscription service that allows us to compare salaries in similar municipalities or other organizations.
We're just finding we're not needing it. We get those from other sources, and so they don't need that $6,000. In the municipal clerk's office, they've signed a contract for a different shredding service, and it will be less expensive, so there's a $4,000 savings. And Mr. Como is recommending that we remove our contribution to the Bow River Basin Council, which we've been doing since 2005, largely because of the provincial changes to regulations. Administration doesn't participate in this anymore and doesn't believe that it will be needed as we move forward. So those are the reductions administration is recommending right out of the gate be removed. Any questions before I move on?
Councilor Graham?
Can you elaborate on the Bow River Basin Council and what that is and what that does or doesn't do?
Part of why this question came up, that's in the CAO budget, I have no idea. We get an invoice, there's no communication, there's no information about what it does. I've not seen anything across my desk in the time I've been in this position. So I sent an email out to multiple managers saying, hey, does anybody know what this is and why we pay for it? And Mr. Como came back and said he used to participate, hasn't for several years, and that given where the provincial changes in legislation around that are going to affect our water and wastewater, that it's no longer necessary. He's sent them an email letting them know that this recommendation is in front of council.
Thank you, I
Yep.
guess.
Any
Anything
other
else?
questions on this section?
Okay, then there's another, about $100,000 worth of things that could be likely one-time reductions based on actuals. And the issue is just that the timing sometimes of how we get invoiced or what we know the budget for these items will be is uncontrolled or unknown. And so we risk, with a lot of small cuts, we risk going over budget. And when we don't have a very big surplus, that could put us in a difficult position. So these are possible, but just wanted to make you aware of some of that risk. So in general municipal, we are expecting insurance costs to go down based on 2023 actuals due to the good work that our IT team has done on cybersecurity prevention and the timing of when we take on some capital projects. But again, when we actually get the insurance bill doesn't always time exactly with our budget. So we believe there may be a reduction in insurance around this amount, but it's unknown. The legal department was trending slightly below the fees that they're using for outsourcing. That might go up a little bit based on a couple of files now. But anyway, it's a difficult budget line to predict. It just depends on what is in front of us every year. But if we're looking for savings, it could be reduced. The Public Works Administration team has offered two things. We could do a bit of less work on some of our lease work on provincial lands, and the sustainability team could access a consultant a bit less for some of their work, which would result in $10,000 of savings. And in streets and roads, we could do less, have less budget for road repair materials and less small projects on sidewalk, sign, gate, and pavement repairs. So there's two issues here. One is anytime there's something that's a serious safety issue, of course, those would address. These would be smaller repairs and issues, so fewer would get done. If there are significantly more safety issues, then again, there's the risk that we would need to go over budget because we have to manage those. And because of some of the way some of the capital budget was rejigged, we're delaying some road repairs, which might mean these are road works. So some of these smaller repairs, we might start to see an increase in them due to that capital project delay. So just flagging, there's a potential risk and trade-off, and again, it's unknown. Depends on the season and what kind of weather we have, what kind of repairs crop up.
So I have some questions around this area. I understand that the insurance and the legal fees one, but with regards to the public works, what is meant by lease work on provincial lands?
So the town has a number of leases on provincially owned land. Like, they tend to be smaller parcels and dispositions, and it's primarily related to like adjacencies to or shared ownership around parks or playing fields or bank fortification along the river. So we have to renew those leases regularly. The provinces changed their process recently so that we are required to do a survey of the land as part of the lease renewal. So this $5,000 goes towards taking that survey work on, and we would just do less of it. It's a lower risk because we do have a number of these leases with the town, and it's kind of a continual process. But yeah, there is a risk to this because we do need to renew some of them.
Okay, thank you. And with regards to streets and roads, a $20,000 reduction for road repair materials. What's the total budget for that? So I'm trying to get a sense of scope, if this is half the budget or 1%, you know?
This is going to be a race between Rick and I to see who's quicker in Questica. I have a feeling he's going to win.
It's not looking at quick, but it's a small portion of several $100,000.
Okay, so for Councillor McCallum's benefit, Rick has indicated that the $20,000 reduction for road repair materials is a small amount of the overall budget. It's several $100,000 when all taken together.
Yeah, yeah, and as Dr. Cottle pointed out, there is a risk, given that we've decreased some of the life cycle capital projects, that we're going to have to do more of the kind of operational road maintenance.
Right.
Because we're not going to be doing the rehab work on some of that.
Right. And is it the same scenario then for the less sidewalk signage, gate and pavement repairs?
Yes,
It's a small part of a larger budget?
yes, not as large as the road repairs, but
Okay.
it's a big budget.
Okay.
If, like for reference, I think it was,
Okay, so for Councillor McCallum's benefit, that portion is about a $200,000 budget, so this would be about a 12.5% decrease. Okay. Yeah,
The last line,
side-
25.
Sidewalk,
Last one.
signage, gate, and
Sorry, so just so I'm clear, Rick, the 20K reduction for road repair materials, that's about 200,000, and the 25K to do less sidewalk signage, gate, and pavement repairs is closer to 400.
okay,
Okay, so
Correct?
other way around.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so, thank you.
Anything else on
Any-
this one?
Did you have a question? Sorry. Okay. Any other questions on this area? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. That gets us to things that are new in the 2024 budget, about $178,000 worth. The first item is the citizen input panel in the communication department. This was an idea to get a bunch of residents together as a way to increase our community engagement, and you'd regularly run questions and issues through the panel. The idea was, right now in the draft or in the proposed 2025 budget, there is a new position in communication that position would take this on, but it was brought forward as an option to you last year if you wanted to do this portion of that person's work a year sooner. So we could cancel that in 2024 and just include it with the new position in 2025, and that's in the budget at $25,000. In the budget for this year is a new position in facilities, a new supervisor position. Administration strongly believes that we do need this position, especially as we bring on the new fire hall and buildings that are more complicated, like Elevation Place age. There's more and more work to be overseen. If we need the savings, we could defer it for a year. It's unknown what the impacts might be, but when we see things like staff going on vacation or getting sick, sometimes it's hard to make sure we have all the coverage we need, especially if there are issues in a building. So it could lead to some temporary service reductions if there's a staffing issue or if we have turnover in unfilled positions. So this is one of those things in my mind, sort of like that's incremental. Like as a building gets older and we take on new buildings, there becomes a workload and there becomes a tipping point. So we're at the tipping point for this position, but could delay it for a year. It wouldn't work for it to not move forward. So anyway, the sustainability e-bike rebate doesn't really affect your tax rate. There'd be no tax savings, but you could retain it into your reserve for future projects. This was something that was added in last year at budget time as an option for 2024. So again, it doesn't reduce taxes, but if there are other priorities in the sustainability reserve, we thought it would be important to have a conversation about it. And then in October, the public art policy was updated to include the microgrant program. That's $32,000. It is funded from the Art Trust, but in 2023, we didn't take this $32,000 in it wasn't included in taxes, so it would actually be included this year as it's currently set up. So it is an increase of $32,000. You could cancel it and still collect the money and just put it into the Art Trust for future years, or you could cancel it completely. Because it's a new program, there's not any community expectation or little community expectation around it yet, so it could just be that we cancel it and bring the art policy back and amend it so that this isn't part of it anymore. There's sort of several options here, and if it's okay, I'll just move to the next slide to talk about that a little more, and then we can move back if people have questions. But it is also captured here in this one-time reductions in arts and events. So in previous years, we have not contributed to the Art Trust when it's been a tough budget year. That's not been a permanent reduction, it's just been a one-time savings, and then the contribution is brought back in the next year. So there's a couple options here because this microgrant program is new. The overall arts and events contribution to the Art Trust is $102,000 if you include both the micro grant and the general contribution. You could cancel completely the micro grant. You could defer it for a year and not collect the additional $32,000. You could collect the additional $32,000 but not do the program and put it in the reserve, or you could do sort of a combination of those things. So I wanted to make sure the 32 isn't double counted, but there's the way the budget is set up right now, there would be $102,000 from taxes that goes to the art trust. 32,000 would go to the micro grant, and the other 72 go to capital projects and art maintenance. You could reduce one or both, or cancel the micro grant. We don't recommend canceling the 70,000, but there's the potential to do the 32. That one can be kind of confusing, so I hope that makes sense. And then in facilities, there are two projects that could be delayed. One is cooling enhancements to the roundhouse, which is the daycare. And the other is in the Civic Center. There's a clean air filtration upgrade that's in the budget for this year that we could delay to future years. Both of those projects are needed. They're both related to climate change. But again, for savings, that could be deferred, but not canceled.
Looking to see if there are any questions on those,
This one
this
or
slide
that
and the
one?
previous one there. Yeah,
Go ahead, Joanne, Councillor McCallum.
yep.
So just to confirm, this last slide, these are mostly savings from reserves. These are not necessarily tax supported.
No, they're all
Change.
they're all tax supported. The only one that's from reserve is the e-bike rebate. That's from the
Okay.
sustainability reserve. Everything else is tax supported. So even
Okay, just
the
because
art
like the
trust
arts and events
reserve,
micro grant, you say it's funded from the art trust reserve, so,
what happens with the art trust reserve is this total art trust contribution this year is $102,000. So that is from taxes and it moves to the art trust reserve. And then 32,000 funds the micro grants, so it's an in and out on our budget end.
okay.
Yeah.
I see what
And
you
then
mean.
the 70,000 funds capital projects and maintenance of our public art inventory and other public art related programs, but it is fully tax supported.
Okay, and then the facilities, the 35K for facilities, that's also from tax, or is that a capital project?
No, that's operating and that's from taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Looking to see if there are any other questions. Seeing none.
Okay, then a few permanent reductions that we would suggest. I mean, council or finance committee could decide to make these one time, but administration's position is, after years of constantly being asked to make reductions, that if we're really serious about reducing things, it doesn't make sense operationally to put them in and take them out, put them in and take them out. We should just get clear that these are things that we're not going to do anymore. So council has $30,000 in community grants that are given out or could be given out every year. It's not always fully given out. That could be a canceled program. Arts and events could no longer do our winter carnival. We could close washrooms for 1 month of the year for a small savings. And programs like Fire Prevention Week could also no longer occur for a small savings. Anyway, maybe I'll stop here and see if there's any, then the rest are all related in the Parks Department. So I'll keep going, let you holler, go ahead, yeah.
Councilor Mall?
Which month would that be? Not July.
They would probably just open a month later.
So I believe currently they open in May?
May.
Yeah, so they wouldn't open until June.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Councilor
Councilor.
Graham?
And clarity on the winter carnival, that's the New Year's Eve celebration,
No,
correct?
that happens in the winter, in February or March. Yeah, well, New Year's Eve is called New Year's Eve. Winter Carnival is a distinct, separate event. There's ice carving, dog sled
yes,
rides.
thank you
Yeah,
very
it
much.
happens in, I
Thank
think,
you.
February or January. Yeah.
Provided we have cold enough weather.
It still happens,
Yeah.
sometimes creatively,
I
but
think a couple of years ago it was canceled because it was just,
too warm.
yeah.
The ice carving might have been canceled, or certain elements might be canceled, yeah. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, then there are several options from the Parks Department. So we could reduce the amount of tree watering we do. Obviously, we wouldn't not water all the trees, but there is significant effort in the summer months over tree watering, so that is something we could do a bit less and see what the consequences are. We could eliminate the downtown flower barrel program. 2 vault washrooms, the vault washrooms are open for 6 months over the summer. These are more at trailheads, and some are vault washrooms at parks as well?
Yes, there's some in parks, like Riverside or Quarry Lake, for example, as well as trailheads. So we would look at the lower usage ones, obviously, and close those
Close
for the
to it.
summer.
The downtown seasonal lighting, which tends to be going up right at about this time, could be eliminated. Last year, one of the new items that you put in the 2023 budget was outdoor ice at Our Lady of the Snows School up in Three Sisters. We could no longer do that. We have park staff every summer do a certain amount of picking up litter in our green spaces. That could be eliminated, and we could just rely on community volunteers. We could stop replacing dead or dying trees in high-profile locations. Every year we plant about 18,000 replace trees that aren't doing well. And then the cemetery bike park, we spend about $16,000 a year maintaining that park. So if we want savings and don't no longer maintain it, we would obviously need to close it because we couldn't guarantee the safety of the space. But that would be about a $16,000 savings.
Councilor Faubert.
For the outdoor ice at OLS this past winter, how well was it used? Do we know?
I would have to check in and get back to you on that off the top of my head. I don't know. It was just opened, like this past winter was the first year that it was in operation, and part of it was because of demand for an outdoor ice service at that part of town.
I recall getting some very positive feedback about it. Okay, and so just for Councillor McCallum's purposes, Mr. Irwin indicated anecdotally, because he lives right there, when the ice was there, there was always people on it. Councillor Graham.
On that note, what's happening with the downtown pond this year? I note there's almost no water in it. Are we going to have an ice surface there? And if not?
Depends on the weather, yeah.
It usually gets flooded, right?
It depends. It is, like the water there is almost non-existent
Almost
right now.
non-existent
It
right now.
has in previous years been flooded as an aid to the existing water levels to just even it out, but I'm not sure. I don't know that we've had those discussions yet. Part of it also depends on weather. We don't want to spend a lot of money flooding the water and a lot of water flooding that just to have the weather not be cold enough, long enough for it to be well used.
So if we didn't do it, would there be a savings there, or we would just carry that money over?
There would be if the weather doesn't cooperate and we're not able to make the ice, there would be a savings, but that would just be part of a surplus at the end of the year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious about this, the cemetery bike park. I thought some of it was maintained by volunteers. Is that just the trail behind the bike park that's maintained by volunteers, or are we also responsible for that?
The portion behind was designed and built through CAMBA. It is a town asset though, and it is contracted services that do the maintenance of that whole facility.
Okay. And they just like resculpture it, or what's involved in the maintenance? Sorry, just curious.
Just keeping it operational for the users, right? So
Okay.
making sure it's safe, fixing features as they need fixing. Yeah.
Just wondering how in-depth it was for that price, so thank you.
That's it for those items, and then now we need to move to go in camera to discuss the remainder.
Okay, so I'm looking to Ms. Hyde for some advice. I have wording with regards to the contractual obligation or the contractual issue. Can I just say, and to protect information around personnel, add it to it? Okay, so I'll move that the Finance Committee take the meeting in camera to prevent disclosure of information that, if released, could reasonably be expected to interfere with the contractual of other with contractual negotiations, the town of Canmore, as well as private personnel information. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay. on because we're going to be taking a break.
Ooh, that was close.
Okay, we're back, and looking at the time, we're going to take a break until 10:40. 10:40.
10:40, Groovadelic.
Okay, we're back. Now, the only matter before us is opening up the floor to, Dr. Cottle, before
Sorry,
I
Mayor
do that.
Krauser, before you go there, I believe Mr. Mackay has a bit of info, just some stats that he wanted to share with council. It is relevant to the previous in-camera discussion, but it's fine to be shared. It's just stats, so we can share it now.
Okay.
So just regarding some of the pricing questions around child minding service utilization at Elevation Place, we had one question around price changes. And so there have been changes over the years. So the member price in 2017 was $2.60 per half hour. The non-member price was $3.60 per half hour. And that has now moved. The member price has increased by $1 per half hour, so from $2.60 to $3.60. And the non-member price from $3.60 to $4.50. So there have been increases over time.
And these are half hours.
Per half hour, yeah. Then there was also some question around utilization. And I just ran some of the stats for 2023, Jan to October. And what we see there is we operated the service for 1,407 hours. And we saw 2,525, hours of usage, which works out to an average of 1.79 children in the space per hour. It does fluctuate, but that's your average utilization, 1.79 kids per hour. Some of the additional data we have, and I didn't crunch the detailed numbers, but that usage represents by month somewhere between approximately 100 and 200 unique individuals.
So I just have one question.
Just to clarify, Joanna, sorry.
Sorry.
Unique child units?
I'd have to dig further to understand if that's, if one parent has two children,
Right.
if they're counted once or twice.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor McCallum.
I just was curious, is our utilization limited at all by our ability to staff the room?
It depends on the month, but yes. So, I mean, we've ranged from operating the service 200 hours in a month down to 117 hours in a month, and that's for the first 10 months of 2023, that range.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information. So now, as I was saying, what's left is to open the floor to any motions that any member of the Finance Committee would like to make with respect to a recommendation to Council around budget. And so I will kick things off with Ms. Hyde. It's the one about the administrative recommended yes, the 40,000. And the motion that I'll be making is that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to accept the reductions recommended by administration in the amount of $40,250, comprised of reductions in the budgets put forth by Communications, $8,500, Human Resources, $26,000, Municipal Clerk's Office, $4,000, and the Chief Administrative Officer, $1,750. Okay. So this is, in my mind, the easiest of the cuts to make, given that they're recommended by administration. I will be putting forward some others, unless anyone else gets to them before I do. But for this one, I think that this is a relatively no-brainer, given that these are recommended by administration and they are amounts that are no longer required in the budget. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'm just seeing if we can get it up on the screen, actually. Okay. Oh, here we go. There we go. Progress. Okay, so there is the motion on the screen. And it's the items that are listed on the slide that was entitled, bear with me, Reductions, Administration Recommendations, $40,250. Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Councillor Faubert?
Thank you, Mayor Krausert. I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. I appreciate administration's recommendations within all these areas coming forward, and I wanted to speak briefly around the Bow River Basin Council. It's part of the province's Water for Life strategy. As part of the work I had done with Alberta municipalities, we were looking at all the water policies and the Water for Life strategy. And essentially it operates as like a watershed planning and advisory council to the Water for Life strategy. But because we are located in a watershed surrounded by protected areas, I'm not sure that it requires as much of our attention as it might if we were in a different location. And that's why I don't think it's something that we've been really engaged with, because there's not really a lot of things being proposed in our watershed. So,
thanks for that.
yeah, I'm happy.
That additional context. Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now I'll open it up. Is there any other motion that you'd like to make? Councillor Mera?
Yes, I'd like to bring forward a motion, and I believe our municipal clerk has, it up there, can put it up on the screen.
There we go.
I brought this motion forward as, we've been sharpening our pencils in different areas. I just think, I did the math, and I think, we've been saying that everyone has their part in contributing and making this community work, and has their responsibility to pay their portion or what they can pay. I did the math. I am quite willing to share some math, but currently the way it stands and the way it was prescribed last year, it worked out to 81 cents a night per participant. And I think when I looked at the average wage, if you go with the minimum wage and how many nights per week, and a person shouldn't spend more of 30% of their wage on rent, which, it's not, for some people it's preferred, but not for many. I think there's many ways we are supporting our business community in helping them with their staffing issues, and different ways we are supporting them. And I know that number one thing is finding a place. Number two is if you do find a place, there's a cost. We do have Happy Pad in different areas, but I just think this brings forward that this is their piece, and I think it's affordable enough, and it's just, some ownership in being part of that program. So that's my reason.
So just some questions. You're essentially, to cover the costs, then, I'm just looking at some information here. The fees as projected would be 6,000, but the supplies and services is 15,000. And so you're looking that the revenues cover that 15,000.
Correct.
So it's an increase of 9,000 paid in the fees, and therefore 9,000 less that we're paying.
Correct.
The budget. What would that amount to if we had the same utilization as this past year as far as the fee? I'm trying to remember what it was. Mr. Mackay.
I'd need to do that math quickly. I think the spirit of the motion, as far as my interpretation of it, is that the actual program fees collected are the same as the Safe Park supplies and services.
Correct.
So that cost recovery is, I guess, 100%. So we would, as we confirm contracts, et cetera, we would take that away and determine what the fee would be. It may be that the supplies and services come in under 15,000, as they did in 2023.
It wasn't a very big fee to start with. If we go from 6 to 15, that's 9,000. It's 2.5 times the original.
Which was 100, so it's 250.
250. Okay. So
For the-
250
for the season.
For the season. It's for the
Okay.
season.
I see.
And like as Mr. Mackay said, like that's the worst case. I think during our presentation, it was only actually, I think supplies was almost half, like it was like 75. So
Okay.
if, assuming the program,
Right. So it may not be.
it may be a
That may,
small
that may be
increase.
our worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can certainly support that motion. I think it makes good fiscal sense. I don't think it's going to have an incredible detrimental effect on utilization, given the numbers involved. So I can support that. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hillstad?
I can support it too. I think Amanda does a great job at looking at all these variables, and I think they'll find that right number, because again, we're looking at, the budgeted price and the potential. I think it's going to come in under that 250. I think it's, again, if it's close to what was last year, it's actually a much smaller increase. So I have faith in Min that they'll be able to work the numbers and still keep utilization high without being a complete detriment to the participants. So, and as from the CA or the COW meeting, when we were presented this information, there were participants that said they would be willing to pay more to make the program work. So, with that in mind, I think, again, what we can do to, again, it's not going to cover the full expenses, because again, the main part is the actual position that runs the program, and we're not looking to cover that. So I think this is finding a nice balance where, again, we're covering the side supplies and services and making it so that, it's a little bit more affordable to the town and the taxpayers, and still making it affordable for those in the program. So I can support it.
Thank you. Councillor Maud and
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I could support this brought forth by Councillor Mara. I feel the program fees, that's not an unreasonable thing to try and cover and recover more of for sustainability. Also, in terms of parking as a commodity in our community, we are raising pricing of parking, and this would be an alignment of that as well, in that philosophy. Thank you.
that's a good point. Councillor Faubert.
Yeah, what I like about this is that it's worded in a way that gives direction to find that sweet spot of how it works and have a bit more cost recovery. The one concern I had is that I know a couple years ago it was at a price point that was lowered because we weren't seeing people use it, but it was a different world a couple years ago, and so I think that moving forward we can, with the way that this is worded, that direction to have that cost recovery basis is good, and I think it would make it a more successful program. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. So for those keeping score, by the way, if we started at 8%, the first motion was a reduction of 0.126%, and that one is a 0.03%. Anybody else wishing to put forward a motion? Councillor Graham.
Thank you. If I could get the clerk to put up the motion regarding fruit trees. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my contacts today, so.
So which one do you want?
The
It looks
20
like
or
there
the
you have
30?
two of them.
The 30, please.
So the one above,
So it's the one, yeah.
there we go.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Graham that the Finance Committee direct administration to add $30,000 to the 2024 operational budget and $30,000 for years 2025 to 2028 to the operational budget for the removal or approval by council.
So what is this regarding? Like, I think
Yeah.
there's a subject
Oh.
missing.
This is not yet.
Oh.
For tree.
Yeah, there's some language missing.
Yeah.
30,000 to the 2024 operating budget.
So yes, and
I think maybe,
Hold on to this.
Ms. Clerk, where it says to add, we want to say to,
can we come back to this one and I can put together some?
Please and thank you.
yeah, I thought we had this, sorry.
I thought we had this too. This is not.
Because if it was already at 10, do you want it to go to a total of 30, or you want to add 30? So it's 40.
Total of 30.
So, okay, because
That's not what that says.
Okay, well, actually, I
Just
think-
Counselor Graham on that, if you want to increase it by 20,000, if you want to add 20, so it's a total of 30, then the years are wrong, because in the Q&A, it's 20,000 over 8 years. In order, so there, I would recommend you go back to the handout from earlier, and which of the options, if you let us know which option it is, we can work on the
So
motion.
I think that where there's two things, I know that in speaking with Councillor Graham, there's two elements. One, he's looking to increase the amount to the fruit tree incentive program, which is not that motion, it's the other motion.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, he was wishing to put a certain amount in the budget per year, starting this coming year, for fruit tree removal from public lands. So
Okay.
they're two different things, so.
So the first motion then, this would be direct administration to include $30,000 for fruit tree removal on public land.
Removal and replacement
Removal and replacement, yes, thank you.
on public lands, yeah, and then,
For
This is one.
fruit tree removal and replacement on public land.
and so this one is separate and apart from the public fruit tree removal incentive program.
Yeah.
And
We don't, if this was in the operating budget, I don't know that we need the years 2025 to 2028 because we only do the 2-year. It's not capital, right?
But we do need to reflect the increase in property tax for the plan years, so that's 25 to 28, but we don't have a plan beyond 28, so we don't need to go
But
beyond
it's
that.
operating.
But I think what Counselor Graham this is the option that we.
25 to 5-year, yeah.
Sorry, this is the option we put in front of them in answering the question, which is it would take 5 years. So I think the council direction is important, that the intent is that this continue to be, that we do the 5-year plan to remove the trees, so.
So it could be for 5 years commencing in 2024. No, in the first one still. Include 30,000 for fruit tree removal and replacement on public land over a 5-year period commencing in the 2024 operating budget. I think that might,
then it would have to be 30,000 per year.
yeah. Yeah, and then include 30,000 per year up above where it says 30,000. Or 30,000 annually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second one is right, Cheryl, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, then the second,
The second one, just because of the confusion here, can I just ask it, fruit tree removal incentive program on private land? Or not, I guess it's an incentive. I just feel like we were
I think it's
confused
fine.
here, so yeah.
okay, so Councillor Graham, does that reflect what you're wanting to put forward?
Yes, and I just have one question of administration. I I'm a little confused as to if this is operational or capital for the replacement trees. In my mind, we're taking and buying an asset, and putting it in the ground. But I'm a little confused.
It's
So-
operating budget.
Yeah,
item.
I would,
It is an operating budget item?
yeah.
It is a little bit of a weird one. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so which one would you like to move first, the 30,000 or the deal with public lands?
Let's
or
deal with the public lands first.
Okay, okay, so that's the first one then?
In speaking to this, we have a $160,000, $180,000 challenge with high-value fruit trees on public lands. In the past, we've been taking the surpluses from the $10,000 allocation and using that to slowly chip away at this challenge. We have seen wildlife come into our community and be relocated or destroyed because of this challenge. Over the years, we've been asking the public to take this seriously and remove the problem from their private property. Meanwhile, we've had a significant challenge on town-owned lands that we have not dealt with in a expedient manner, in my opinion. So to start dealing with this issue, I'm proposing that we put $30,000 a year over the next 5 years to manage this challenge within our community. I believe our community has strong feelings towards wildlife and how we interact with wildlife, and this is a meaningful step in that direction. I know that the Biosphere is working with the Calgary Community Foundation and working on a substantial grant there, and this would show our commitment to this issue and help us, potentially help us with that fund from the Calgary Foundation. With that, I look forward to hearing from my fellow councillors.
Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Councillor Faubert?
I do have a couple questions. One, Councillor Graham, why go with 5 years instead of the 8-year option?
This is a significant challenge, and I think that's something we should tackle as quickly and as expediently as financially possible.
Okay. I do recall that we have a natural asset inventory planned. Is that still? Or was that, I feel like in my mind, there's a potential for a natural asset inventory.
Yes, I believe it was taken out of the capital plan last year when we were looking for reductions. I can double check that though.
And then in terms of this work, would this be contracted out or would this be within the Parks Department?
It would be contracted out primarily, yes.
Okay. And then are there any grants out there for replanting trees? There's no way for you to know that. But
I would like to
If you're
yes, no
aware of
question.
any, you could let us know if you're aware of any.
well, because of the trend towards the natural asset inventory and the fact that your urban forest can provide a climate solution to your community, I felt like there's potential for grant funding out there to do, because I think that replanting these trees when we take them out and maintaining those natural assets is important. So I'm glad that the Biosphere is looking for some on private land. I will do my own, I will look into it and let you know. No
I would
problem.
just, if I may, I would say our all town staff that are focused on projects are pretty good. I'm constantly shocked and surprised at how good they are at finding grants for programs. So I would I have faith that the sustainability team would be looking to find grants, and if we do find some, we would likely come back to council with an adjustment to funding sources for this if it was approved.
Because this hasn't been in our budget yet, we may have never looked for them. Right?
True.
Right? Like, do we, well, in the sense that we use the the surplus funds from the public removal. So by not having dedicated funds, we may not have explored grant opportunities on this one, but that would be an amazing win.
I would agree.
All right, that's, I think, all my questions.
Councillor Mah, did you want to speak to that?
I just had a question for administration, perhaps towards Rick. What would be the tax impact at this $30,000 a year?
0.094% increase.
Sorry?
0.094% increase.
0.094%. Well, 0.094%, which I think is a good number for the public to know, given that we are trying to walk the walk and minimize how many animals are destroyed, I think that's that's a tangible, palatable cost for that, and I could support this motion.
I can also support this motion. You know, as you learn about things as questions are asked over time, and actually I hadn't realized that before we dug into this in the last year, that we weren't focusing on public lands, and so I think that it's important that we walk the talk, as opposed to waiting till the amounts are left over, and I think that this helps us do that. And that's not to lay blame. This is all evolving new stuff for us, and you know, we have taken the efforts to be more strict with regards to fruit trees. This council has instigated or implemented the ban on any new fruit tree planting. We've also, you know, increased fines, and we also have to make sure that we're not asking of others to do things unless we're doing them ourselves. And so I like this plan. It's sooner the better in my mind, but we also have to be respectful of our budgetary constraints and the amount of work that can be done in any particular year, and so spreading it over the 5 years, I think, is reasonable, and it also makes an impactful change with each year, right? Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Mera?
Yeah, I too will support this motion, especially when you put it to 0.094%. And I do believe we should be walking the talk. And I do know when you look around and you see a lot of trees that are on public lands, and you go, oh, like there's a mountain ash and there's a lot of berries on it. But we're requesting our residents to remove theirs and finding our residents for having theirs. So I will support this motion.
Councillor Hillstead?
I will also support this. Again, there's sometimes very limited funds left over from the other incentives, so this just makes sense to, you know, get us focused on our stuff to, you know, as Councillor Mera said, walk the talk. So, and I like the fact that it's spread out over those 5 years, so yeah, I will support this as well.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Faubert?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't want to, I thought you were.
Did I make the face I want to talk?
Yeah, you looked like you're about to say something.
I am in support of this one. I somewhat preferred the 20,000 over 8-year spread, but I'm willing to go with this one. I think that it's really important we have a reputation and wildlife liability on our public lands when it comes to fruit-bearing trees. And so it's putting money towards removing them lives up to our values, priorities, and I think our expectations of our own residents as well. So thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then you have a second motion?
Mayor Krauser, can I just, I did have an answer to Councillor Faubert's question about the natural asset inventory. It is right now an unfunded project for $100,000 in 2025.
Great, thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yes, I'd like to move that the Finance Committee direct administration to increase the fruit tree removal incentive program in 2024 by $10,000 to a total of $20,000 to the operational budget for approval by council. Hopefully everybody could hear that as I was speaking to the other screen. In speaking to this, last year was the first year that this program was fully subscribed. And I would like to applaud the community for their participation in this program. And I think it shows the willingness of our citizens to actively make a difference in how we coexist with wildlife. As a result, I would like to see this doubled to give those who want to the opportunity to make a real difference in how we coexist with wildlife. Yes.
Looking to those who would like to speak to the, yes, Councillor Faubert.
Thank you for that, Ms. Smithers, on the natural asset inventory. The reason I'd asked about that is in my mind, I thought there could potentially be some implications around what we do with our urban forest. With respect to this motion, I'm not going to be voting in favor of it because in the previous motion, we established a $30,000 fund for removing fruit trees on public lands. I think that this motion for an incentive program, we already have an incentive program. I'd like to see the biosphere potentially come to the table with some grant funds first. And the thing is that our residents we're incentivizing something that people should be doing already. And I think that the program could help people who might, I see incentives as a way to help people who might not have the ability to do something achieve that outcome. And so I think that when it comes to incentivizing this work, I'm happy that it was fully subscribed this year. And I think that that speaks to the success of people talking more about this issue, understanding how they have a responsibility for the trees on their property and with respect to wildlife, and that this is one of those things that we can do as residents of the Bow Valley to create a safer space for wildlife coexistence. But I still think that that responsibility lies with the property owner regardless of our incentive program. So I like to incentivize it. I like that we have this program. If we went with $20,000 a year for 8 years in the last motion, I may have considered this motion because this is we're looking to save money, not save money. We're here right now really looking at that tax increase on our residents and really trying to consider affordability and weighing that everything we add to the budget pushes that tax increase back up. So I made no sense in my mind, and I believe I just rambled for 2+ minutes, but I won't. I'm happy where this program is. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
One of the things I picked up on in your monologue there was, I think, a desire to shape this program towards people that couldn't afford it. Am I correct in your?
When we incentivize things, like we want to change a behavior, we want people to do something, but I think that putting some money behind it, like the e-bike thing, really goes to benefit the people who can least afford to make these changes because, removing a tree costs money. So I see there being value of an incentive program, but I think that using this to get everyone to uphold their responsibility of their trees is, I don't think is necessarily the way to get to the end result that we want, especially in a tight budget year.
Okay, Councillor Hillstad?
I won't be able to support this one either for many of the reasons in that lovely monologue that Councillor Faubert gave.
It was speaking to the motion.
It was,
wasn't a
oh
monologue.
yeah, but it spoke well to the motion, I felt. You know, it just made me at the end to start trailing a little bit, but for the most part, it was quite on point. So for many of those reasons, yeah, I think keeping it at 10,000, again, last year was, as Councillor Graham pointed out, was when it was first fully subscribed. So I think, yeah, we've hit the target, but again, for many of the same reasons that were already stated, I think that we can leave it at the 10,000. We just did 30,000 for public, so we know that public trees are going to get removed now. So we don't have that worry in our mind that, you know, oh, there's not going to be any funds left over. And I still think 10,000 is enough to help those that are, you know, maybe on the fence of whether they're going to remove it themselves or they need that incentive to remove those trees. Some people are probably not going to remove their fruit trees ever, and that's their right, as long as they pick them clean. So I think that keeping at 10,000 is good, and I don't feel we need to go to the 20,000 yet. I would like to see what comes back from Biosphere. Hopefully they can get a grant and that there'll be additional funds that way. So for now, I'd like to leave it at 10 and see how it goes from there. So I won't be able to support this one.
I will not be able to support this motion either. Councillor Faubert and Councillor Hillstad actually have convinced me, especially reminding me about the Biosphere initiatives. I'm very hopeful because that will actually be a major game changer if they get that grant, because it's a very large grant. If this motion is defeated, I would be prepared to put out a motion that asks administration to advise council as soon, or if and when the $10,000 is fully subscribed, because it may be a decision point that we could do something at that point midstream, and we may have better information around Biosphere. We may do nothing, but at least we will be able to make a timely decision based on the current budget. Councillor Ma, you wish to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was inclined to support this, but I also appreciate flexibility. And what you just mentioned about if we're willing to bring forth another motion, say we put this program out as it is at $10,000 and we burn fruit out with registration by May or June, and perhaps we don't get what we're hoping to get from the Biosphere, from their grant application, that we still put this back up on the table for the additional 10,000, I think that would be prudent. Is that what you're thinking of when you're describing that?
And we'll know our year end, we'll know if there's a surplus, perhaps, or you know, there's a lot of other information that we could have. We may decide to do nothing, but we also may have the opportunity to then add to it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion on the table? Councillor Mara?
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having to look all
No,
over.
no. I appreciate all the discussion. I, too, at first was looking to support this, but then looking at all the factors, the Biosphere, I think with the public lands that we're looking at moving forward with, that was just brought forward, I think there'll be a significant amount of trees removed with that, so that we're already ahead of the game. I don't know, like numbers, but well, more than what we would have had. And with knowing the Biosphere is looking at grants, and that's just is on private property. So for that reason, I cannot support the motion.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion before I go to Councillor Graham to see if he would like to close?
Yeah, I would like to close.
Yes, Councillor Graham.
I think the number is 2,500 trees total that are at some level of a challenge. I appreciate the conversation around the Biosphere and what else might be happening out there. I really appreciate the mayor's comments on potential timeliness of budget relooks at a different point in time, and if administration should come back to us saying that this is fully subscribed at some point in time in the new year, I would hope that my fellow councillors would support that increase at that point in time. So yeah, I appreciate the discussion and look forward to the vote.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so the motion is defeated with Councillor Graham in favor. I am going to move that administration, oh, okay. Yes.
Just want to make sure I
Councillor
didn't procedurally just shoot myself in the foot for 6 months from now. It's a finance
Yeah,
committee
it's
motion.
fine.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it would be council that did it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think Ms. Smithers is just suggesting, and I agree, that we just add in for 2024 to this so that it's clear.
Yes.
In 2024, yeah.
Okay. That is so I'm moving that the Finance Committee direct administration to advise council when the $10,000 fruit tree incentive program is fully subscribed for 2024. And this gives us a point in time as council to determine if there is any action we'd like to take when we're advised of such. If we're advised of such, if it doesn't get fully subscribed, then we're not taxing for it. And if it is fully subscribed at some point, we can take a look at potentials for where that could be paid if we would like to add to it. But that would all be determined at a future point. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Councillor Graham?
I really appreciate this motion. I think this is poignant and the wise thing to do and a timely thing to do when it comes around. So if the community is actively involved in this program, then we'll make adjustments as needed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's a great motion. It provides flexibility, as I mentioned before. Also, just as like a message to the community, like this program is a great opportunity. So if you're sitting on the fence to like get rid of a tree that is a problem tree, like this will be subsidized up to $500. So let's see what the community wants to do, and if there's an appetite for it, perhaps we can continue further. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so now I'll open it up for if anybody else would like to make a motion. I'll make one. So this is dealing with the uncontrollable items that there were some recommendations where we could cut. And so my motion is that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to reduce the general municipal budget in the amount of $25,000 due to decreased insurance costs, or due to anticipated decreased insurance costs. Speaking to the motion, you know, in municipal governance, we're not allowed to pass deficit budgets for good reasons. We also try our darndest to not tax one more dollar than we have to. And so there's always the balance. There's things that are out of your control, but if you see some things trending in a certain way, and especially, we see some things trending positively for us due to good cybersecurity prevention. Let's pass that on to the taxpayer and not tax for it in case it doesn't go as trended. We can deal with that in the future. So I'd ask for your support on this motion and ask if anybody would like to speak to it. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Would anybody else like to put a motion on the table? I will put another one on the table. So I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to reduce the CAO budget in the amount of $25,000 regarding anticipated lower legal fees. Same thing. It looks like we're trending lower, not wanting to overtax. I certainly hope that the trend continues, and if not, we can deal with such things at some point in the future if required. Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Councillor Faubert.
I actually have a small procedural question.
Okay.
So in Councillor Graham's motions, it was that the Finance Committee directed administration to change the budget, and in your motions, it's that Council changes the budget. Are we still, I feel, because like in one way, it's that administration will bring a budget back to Council for consideration. Yeah. So I think they both work.
I think so too. So in my mind, administration takes the recommendations of the Finance Committee and provides that recommendation to Council. And so our purpose is to advise Council, and that's why I worded it this way.
Yeah.
But my intent is that if this is passed, then what's brought to Council is the budget with all of the changes approved by this body.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
And then there's still an opportunity if there's second thought and people no longer are aligned with that, or we had new information or whatever, that we could make the final decision, Council. Yeah. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, it just was like a small nuance difference.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'm in support of the motion.
Okay,
thank
great,
you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I will make only one more from this page myself, and that's with regards to the Public Works. So I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to reduce the Public Works administrative budget in the amount of $10,000 to reduce lease work on provincial lands and professional fees. On provincial lands and professional fees. Okay. Ditto to my previous arguments. If this is a place that we can, it's a constant rolling work, and if we can save that this year, let's do that. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Would anybody else like to make a motion? Councillor Faubert.
The motion that I'd like to put forward is to defer the facility supervisor position to 2025.
We'll just wait for it to get up there and then you can speak to it. So this is referenced on the new 2024 programs and services. Defer the facility supervisor, the new facilities supervisor position to 2025. And you'd like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Yeah, I think that deferring this position for a year will help us achieve the tax rate that I think balances all of the needs of our community, along with the fact that every increase is an affordability factor in a community that struggles really hard with affordability. I think that one of the reasons why out of the list of potential new programs that could be deferred or removed, I'd like to the Finance Committee to consider this one, is that it is a deferral. So it means that that position, which I do believe is needed, would come online in 2025. And I think that it's already in those budgets because it was approved last year, right?
Well, if you remove it this year,
It's just from-
it'll have to be added next year. So it'll increase next year's tax rate by the amount.
It should already be in there, though.
Well, but if you remove it this year, then it has to be put back in.
Oh, wait.
Okay, so
I-
it will
I
reduce
can-
next year's by this amount as well, and then we'll have to be put back in.
Yeah.
Because in the forecast, it should already be in there.
Oh, I see. You're saying is it already in the forecast? Yes, it's already in the forecast.
Sorry.
But it increases next year's amount because it gets removed from the base, and the way we anticipate the tax increase in the future year is on the base budget. So to your fundamental question, is it in the assumption for 2025? Yes, but then you're reducing the base amount this year, so it has a correlating impact next year of an increase.
Yeah, it's a fundamentally different calculation to do it this way.
That's right.
But yeah, I think I just didn't ask my question right because I was,
That's
it's
a good
like,
question.
it's like, I feel like it's in there, but if we take it out, what does that even mean for the next year? So, but thank you so much. Anyways, I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
I'm looking to see if there's, your Councillor Ma, you'd like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate a lot of the sentiments you bring forth, Councillor Faubert. I just feel with the age of our facilities and the complexity of our facilities, and some are getting kind of long in the tooth, as well as the urgency from admin about this position, I do feel there is validity and it's useful to have this supervisor position stream on board for 2024. My thoughts.
Looking to see anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor McCallum?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate you bringing this forward, but I will not be able to speak in support of this amendment. I believe that I heard administration state that we are at a tipping point and that there's struggling to be able to provide time off for staff that have earned it without the addition of this position. And if there's one thing that I realize our staff need is they need to be able to take their time off, and we need to be able to make sure that they are being cared for as well. I guess I had another question. What would be, outside of what we heard from admin in terms of the tipping point, is there any other impacts to removing this position that you could be able to share with us? Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask this question when the amendment was made.
No, that's okay. It's the beauty of the Finance Committee. We have a little bit more fluidity within the debate and questions to arise. So, Ms. Smithers.
Thank you for the question, Councillor McCallum. Yes, there would be some other impacts. In addition to the challenges that we're having right now with coverage for the supervisor and just business continuity, which impacts the time off that they're able to take, we would see impacts to project delivery. As you've noted, both for Elevation Place, which is 10 years old now, and even just some of the deficiency wrap-up that we'll have to be taking on with the new fire hall. A lot of those projects are led by a supervisor, so we would have some challenge in taking on and delivering some of those projects when they need to be done. And also, most notably, in terms of impact in the community, we would likely see unplanned closures of Elevation Place for, it could be up to a week at a time. And the challenge, the issue, the reason for that is it's already pretty thin coverage across our existing facilities. We did actually, even this year in the spring and again in the fall, have some times where we thought we would have to go to an unplanned closure just because we weren't sure that we'd be able to provide coverage for the facility staff. Given that we're bringing on a new building now, we would no doubt be in the same situation again next year, where we would be looking at some unplanned closures because we did not have staff available at certain times.
Does that answer your question, Councillor McCallum?
Yes, thank you. And it just confirms that I will be able to support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Hillstead?
Thank you for that question, Councillor McCallum. I had a similar one, so I don't have to ask it. But that information does help me with my decision of not being able to support this, because I do think that position is needed, and for all the reasons that have been stated. So I will not be able to support it, even though I do applaud for the trying to sharpen the pen there. And that was one that I was looking at, but after all the information we've received, I think that need to keep it in there, so won't be able to support that. Thanks.
It's important that we have these discussions, and it's important, if there's any inclination to explore, that we have those discussions. And it certainly has given me pause. That was me pausing. No, seriously, like, I get asked, and I mean this, when something comes up and councillors say, oh, I need a little bit more time. Actually, this is one of the ones that I was thinking I needed maybe a little bit more time just to think about for a minute or two. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Okay. Is everyone ready to vote? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated with Councillors Mera and Faubert in favor. I'm going to throw out another one then. Same page of the materials. I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to defer the Arts and Events Micro-Grant Program to 2025. Or is it better for me to just say future year?
I think that is fine. You could defer it to 2025. Just to be clear, my assumption would be then that we are not taxing for it.
Yeah.
and putting it in the art trust, that it's an actual reduction to
Yes.
the tax increase for this year. And then at 2025, we can put it in the base budget, and we would speak to it again as a new service in 2025, and you can reconsider it at that time.
Okay, so to 2025 then, and, you know, every little bit counts. When this came to us, it was widely supported, and I still support it. But it came to us midstream, and now that we have the big picture, given that there hasn't been anything done in this regard yet, because it's still so fresh, I think it is a good opportunity to defer it and consider it a future year. Yeah, and look forward to hearing what others may think about this. Councillor Faubert?
Yeah, this is a tough one because you do want to see areas of expansion in terms of some of these programs that we have envisioned around arts and culture for our community. But I think you're right, we haven't actually done this yet. Therefore, pressing pause and having it return back as a new service level next year doesn't take it away. It doesn't disappear, but we can adjust our tax increase using this one lever this year and have another conversation next year. I also think philosophically, I think that wrapping our heads around the fact that there are two discretionary areas where we are kind of focused on cutting, which is like arts, culture, and recreation. These are tough things, I think, and although these are individual decisions, they can add up. So this one was the easiest one for me to agree with. Thank you.
Anybody else like to, Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was curious if you would entertain a friendly amendment of, say, rather than fully canceling or deferring, do a budget drop to 16,000 instead. And the reason why I speak to that is I feel in the spirit of the microgrants, the audience of this is artists where it doesn't take a lot of money to make a big difference. And so I feel there's potentially outsized benefit for the cost of it, and I'd be curious to see if we could run this program at a lower budget for this first year. So curious about your thoughts.
It's an interesting suggestion. I'm not willing to accept it as a friendly amendment, but it's certainly open to you to bring an amendment. Would you like to do so? So that we can.
Does that make an unfriendly amendment?
Means you have to vote on the amendment. You have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to make what you referenced as a 16
The
down.
amendment, you say,
Yep.
is recommended to council to.
As opposed to
would be
deferring the
reduce-
project. Yeah.
Would be reduce the arts and events micro-grant program to $16,000.
Yes, please. Yeah.
For 2024.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I am counting it as in fact an amendment because instead of a 100% reduction, it's a 50% reduction. So I'm seeing it as along the same lines. Would you like to speak any further to that? You've already spoke to it, but anything else? Okay, so looking to council to see if there's anybody else that would like to speak to this motion, amending motion. Councillor Graham?
This is one of those ones where I need a pause. I sat on the CAC committee for the past 2 years. I sit on the Canmore Mountain Arts Foundation committee. We are always quick to cut arts and culture. It's an easy, well, it's relatively easy thing to do, but you look around town and you see the incredible art that we have on display. From the mural that sits behind the Arts and Events Center, to the Big Head, to Tony Blair's Blooms project, to what sits in Arts Place, to what we have here in our council chambers. These add to the richness and fullness of our community. And to just remove them, I think is a bit of a shame. This is a, we keep talking about small numbers, small changes, and all those small changes add up and they end up with a $65 million budget or whatever it is we're talking about at the end of the day. But it makes me sad when we look to things like this that enrich the community that we live in. So I won't be supporting either of these amendments, or this amendment or the original. Thank you.
Okay, so just to note, the amendment actually gets you closer to where you want, and then you can still vote against the other one.
It does get me,
Okay.
yeah, I recognize that. I recognize that this is a reduction, and I appreciate Councillor Ma's willingness to go there. And that's my statement at this point in time.
So I want to agree with everything you said, except for the fact that I don't see this actually as taking away something since it hasn't started. I love public art. I don't want to touch it. I love our public art contributions. Don't want to touch it. I don't want to take away a festival. I do not want to do any of what you've suggested, except I do want to defer a program starting that hasn't started yet. And in doing so, save $32,000, which is 0.1%. And it all adds up. And I get it, it's small money, but, I think that's what we need to take a look at. So I won't be able to support the amending motion. Councillor Hillstead.
I concur. I don't want to reduce all the things that you just spoke to. This one, as it is a new program, I'm more willing to defer it. I'd like to see it stay in, but at the same time, I see the merits of deferring it because it did come midstream and we do have the big picture now. So I think with how I'm leaning right now is to not support the amendment to the amendment and go back to the original one eventually. So we'll see how it goes, but that's where my head's at the moment.
Anybody else like to speak to the motion, the amending motion? Yes, go ahead to close.
Yeah, if I could just close with regards to this. I know the program hasn't started yet, but when we did vote for this unanimously prior, it showed the council this is support. And I think for the arc of an artist's development, we're looking at budding artists here from the microgrant side, and these are folks that are new, they're earlier in their arc of their project, and this is where they gain momentum to become like the stronger artists down the road. And so I think it's like the value for this is I believe in it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. On all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so the amending motion, did you put it? Oh, are you voting for or against?
Against.
Okay, so the amending motion is defeated with Councillors Ma and McCallum in support. Now we're back to the original motion to defer this to 2025. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried with Councillors Graham, Ma, and McCallum opposed. Okay. Looking now to see if there are any other motions that anyone would like to put forward. Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Please, of admin. Under the communication citizen input panel, it says could include with new position if approved in 2025. We have a new position in communications in 2025.
There is a communication position in that approved plan for 2025, and when this came to Finance Committee last year, the two options were to have this work included with that position in 2025, and Council chose to bring it as contract services in 2024. So we're just suggesting we don't do that in 2024. If that position remains in the budget for 2025, that work would be done then.
So if we did it in 2024, we'd have to contract it out.
Correct.
But if we waited till 2025, we've already approved, we have within the budget a new position that could do
Yes.
that work.
Yes.
Just to clarify that, just as a reminder, the 2025 is just a plan. So it's it'll be the start of a 2-year budget. And it's in the plan because we believe we need it. But, it could be, anyway. So it's just contingent on that plan and the position in the plan getting approved as part of the base budget. But that right now is our plan for the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we typically approve a 2-year capital plan, though, right? And maybe that's where in my mind I'm thinking in a 2-year in the operating.
It's a 2-year operating budget and then a 6-year plan. Yeah. But then we also have to do a 4-year operating plan? Is that right, or 3? Total of 4. So what we do in the 2 years is we approve 2, and then there's a plan for 2. Yeah. So
Okay.
the position is in the plan,
Yeah.
but it's a
Yeah.
maybe.
It's not.
Yeah.
And then when when council approves the budget in December, then that approval then goes into 2025 and that 2-year plan comes into play. Okay. No? Plan. That's why I said plan.
Yeah, she said plan. The 2-year plan comes into play.
The
Right.
plan comes into play, but we effectively start the process over again based on, again, what we've learned, what's changed in this
Right.
next kind of year period. So right now, our plan is that plan, but
Yeah.
things will likely change and new things will be in the plan.
Yeah, well, because that's just, it's like that natural asset inventory, right? Like, there are
Yes.
things in the future that I know have been part of the plan, I'm just trying to keep track, yeah.
Gotcha.
I would be willing to put forward a motion to cancel the citizen input panel for 2024. Given the additional information from administration, because I think I really like this idea. I think it would be a really good thing to initiate. Doing it 1 year earlier using a consultant versus a year later in-house with a new communications position, I prefer that second option, even though it means a year delay in getting to this type of a program. Thank you. To council to cancel for 2024 the citizen input panel.
Do we need
Does
an
that
amount
work?
in the amount of $25,000?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For $25,000. At the end. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a motion on the table. Looking to, Councillor Hillstad, you'd like to speak to the motion?
I can support it. I just was curious if we should also have in there, just for clarification, to be included with the new position that's in the plan. Or
I don't think we need that in the
Okay.
motion.
Yeah, so
That's- I just wanted
That
to
is
make-
our plan.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's in the, so, that's why I just wanted to know, if we don't need it, that's fine, I can support it as is, because that's what the plan is, so.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, Councillor Faubert.
Where are we at?
Yeah.
Almost 0.5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sharpen that pen. I'm going to sharpen my pen.
So, okay, so looking to see, just one second here. Okay. I will put a motion on the table, and it's a capital item, so it's not going to affect the tax item. It's around the origin request for a wheelchair lift van. So I believe Ms. Hyde has this. There we go. It's a big one. The Finance Committee recommend to Council to support the purchase of a van with a wheelchair lift by Origin in the amount of $25,000 to be funded for the Alberta Low Income Transit Pass Program grant, subject to an agreement being entered into with Origin that includes access and service availability requirements for eligible Canmore residents who do not reside at Origin, a cost recovery model and service fees, ongoing reporting requirements, recognition of the town's contribution, and consequences for non-fulfillment of the service. So this basically is a $25,000 capital expenditure from a grant that we anticipate. If that doesn't come forward, then something else would have to be recommended. Ms. Rogers?
Correct. I just wanted to clarify, it wouldn't be a capital purchase. We're not actually purchasing anything. It's a grant, so it would
Okay.
be, yeah.
So it's a grant, but it's not.
You didn't have capital
it's not-
in your
It's not
motion.
taxed for.
Correct. It's not taxed
Yeah,
for?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not capital, but it's not taxed for, is I guess what I was getting at mostly. And the conditions I put on there were based on the answers that were provided to the questions. Mr. McCarthy?
Just for us, I wanted to confirm that that funding source will require the government of Alberta to approve that use for it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ensure that if the government of Alberta said no, and there wasn't a motion that identified a potential different funding source, a reserve, that we wouldn't be able to enter into this agreement. So I just wanted to make sure you had that context.
Yes, and I think in the original package, with regards to this request, it indicated that municipal funding capital only would allow Origins to offer exception. Where was it here? Oh, funding source. If the government of Alberta approval isn't received, alternate source of funding will be identified, example, operating reserve.
Yeah, so I guess just for clarity, would council like us to come back for approval for that? Or would we just fund it from operating? Does this motion enough? So we would say that a low-income transit pass program grant or operating reserve?
Or alternatively.
Or would you prefer that if we can't get that approval from the province, that we come back to you
Yeah,
with a staff report?
Yes.
So if that's the case, if you want us to come back to you, then we just leave it like this and report back.
okay. Yeah, I would like it to come back. No, but it's providing seniors some wheelchair mobility. So this isn't trying to reduce the budget with this one, this is trying to meet a need.
It's giving us approval for the spend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I grabbed the conditions on the responses to the questions we asked, and I would love to, you know, give this the opportunity to provide a service to the town. I appreciate Origin coming forward with this, and for the sake of not only their residents, but all residents that could qualify. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to say, when this first came to council, I was a little nervous because I felt that we might be supporting one group of Canmore residents over another. But I'm pleased to see these changes and I guess conditions with regards to the grant to Origin that ensures that all Canmore citizens that require this service will have equal access to it, not just one particular business in town. And I would like to thank Origin for coming forward and thinking creatively in being able to provide a service in our community that is obviously really very much required. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw over here, Councillor Faubert.
I'm going to speak in favor of this motion, and Councillor McCallum expressed some of the same perspective that I share. I think that ensuring that we're using these transit grant funds to fund a program that benefits our residents, and especially a vulnerable and marginalized group of residents, which are seniors with disabilities, I think that this can be a really successful program, and I'm really grateful that a private enterprise has approached us in order to be able to increase transportation options for seniors in our community. So I'm willing to partner or agree to a grant. And I think that the conditions that the mayor has put forward in this motion address any of the areas where council had concerns in the original presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hillstead?
I just want to thank you for bringing this motion forward and just in the way you have brought it forward, because again, it has alleviated the concerns that I had. So I will support this motion how it is presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mara?
Thank you. I too will be supporting this motion, and thank you for bringing it forward. It really addresses our accessibility in our town, and it also moves and shows how we work with our private sector. So it's another way of seeing how the town and we work with others in providing services to our community.
Councillor Maw?
Thank you, Your Worship. I got to admit, when this first came up, I was a little bit dubious and had some concerns. I do appreciate the one part you have here in your motion, ongoing reporting requirements, because that's a part that allays a lot of my significant concerns about prioritization or over who gets to access the service. So I think that's encapsulated there, so thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Would anybody else, does anybody else have another motion? Okay, Councillor Faubert?
I don't have a motion, but I want to say that I think we're still on target for a municipal tax increase that's in line with inflation and population growth. And I think that for me is the sweet spot. And so I see a lot of options that administration have brought forward that just are not things I'm willing to cut from the budget to get below inflation and population increase. So at this time, I don't have any more motions.
Okay, thank you. Actually, you raise a very good point. Just as I think we're wrapping up this committee's work and what's being recommended to the budget, where we are is last year we approved a 5.5%. We also knew that it was susceptible because the cost of living was trending higher, but we didn't have the stats yet to support that going higher in the budget for 2024 last year. And sure enough, when it came forward, the status quo to basically provide what we had approved previously went up to 7.8. Now, what we've done is we've added the safe park back in. We've added additional public land fruit tree removal. And even with those additions, though, we also cut out some things. So in fact, it says, Mr. Irwin said, it's 7.6 right now, or according to my calculations, 7.572. 7.618. Oh, there you go. We'll go have a math off. You got your computer, so I'll defer to you. But so we're in that 7.6 range. So we've actually added some programs and still found some things to reduce the amount of the increase. Nobody likes a tax increase, and so, but we have to be responsible to the services that we provide, and we have to be responsible to the operations that we're funding, and I believe that there's been some really excellent conversation, excellent discussions, very thoughtful consideration from members of the committee and administration getting here, and I know it took a lot of work to get here, and so I just wanted to express appreciation for everybody's efforts. Now we have a little bit of time to think about it and what's coming to council for recommendation. And just to reflect then, if we're in that 7.6 range, it's something less than the 7.8 scenario of 155 increase or $12.92 a month. It's probably going to be something in the neighborhood of just over $12 a month for the average home, which is $12 a month. But we've all been experiencing those inflationary pressures, and the municipal operations are not exempt from those. Is there, just as we're closing up, is there anything that anybody else would like to say at this time? Okay, seeing none.
I'd like to say something, sir.
Councillor Mo.
Thank you. I just wanted to, thanks for everyone for all your great work and discussion. Also, big thanks to admin. Like, Rick, I don't see you as often. It's like, this is like the big time of the year. I see you guys a lot, Palki, et cetera. Like, thank you so much for coming back. Like, this list of reductions was very thought-provoking, and it definitely gives a sense that no stone was left unturned, and it gave us the information to really dig deeper to see what we could do. So if we didn't have the information here, I don't think we would have gotten to where we are today. So thank you.
Councillor Mara?
Thank you. I just want to echo what Councillor Ma has just said, and I thank everyone here in this room and at the table and who's behind the scenes for sharpening their pencils and trying to get us forward during this time where inflation and everyone's facing increases. So we're all trying to tighten our belts, and this is the best we could do, is still offering our community the best service we can offer too. So I want to thank everybody.
Okay, thank you. And so we will not need the meeting on Thursday, and the Finance Committee's job is now done with respect to the budget this year. Now it's for administration to take all of that information and put together the recommendation coming from the Finance Committee, and it will come back to Council on we have a special meeting?
No, it's your regular business meeting on December 5th.
Regular business on December 5th, okay. And with that then, I move that we adjourn. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone.